Hey, it's
Hi,
Marina.
how you
How are you?
doing?
I want to start off by saying sorry. I was totally dropped the ball this week on the timing, and I'm sorry that you have to do it on the weekend.
It's okay. As long
Oh,
as we get it done.
I know, I know. Okay, so let me make sure this is recording.
Okay.
Um, I set it to record automatically.
Yeah,
Okay,
it says
it's
recording.
recording, right? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So we talked about doing sexual orientation in schools. I'll let you start off.
So I'm gonna start with like saying who I am. So I am Esmeralda Conde. I teach Spanish Wichita at the high school level. So most of my students, I only teach Spanish one, so most of my students are freshmen, which is a lot of them. But yeah. So I don't know if you want to introduce yourself before we start with the.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm Leticia Gonzalez, and I am teaching Spanish 1 at an 8th grade level. So I teach at a middle school here in Lawrence, Kansas. I thought you were in Topeka, so I was like, oh, she's close, but not, you're in Wichita.
Yeah, all the way over here.
Yeah, so did you have a good first year?
It was kind of crazy, but it was okay at the end. I finally got to see some of my students. I never got to see all of them at once, but
Yeah, same.
COVID restrictions were pretty bad this year.
Yeah, same here. And I think there were some pluses and some minuses because it was kind of nice to get a little bit eased into it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely looking forward to teaching a class with everybody in the room and not having to look at the computer while looking at, people in the classroom. So, but
Yeah,
anyway, overall it was a good year.
good. Okay, so I'll start dealing with sexual orientation in schools. So what I have, it could be confusing for some students and some stuff, especially like older people. I think older teachers that have been working with the students for a long time or in schools for a long time, it's kind of hard to like get good with sexual orientation. Now that we can see it more often and more present at schools. Um, so I'm gonna go over the definition of sexual orientation. Sexual orientation, it's about who you're attracted to and what want to have a relationship with. Relations or sexual orientation include gay, lesbian, straight, bisexual, and asexual. Well, gay people, it's attract to people of the same gender, also called homosexual, and gay women may prefer to be called lesbians. Bisexual, people attracted to both men and women. Straight, people attracted to a different gender. An example would be women attracted to men and men attracted to women. And then asexual, people who don't experience any sexual attractions for anyone. Okay. Do you want to say or something or?
Well, to go back to the what you mentioned about the perception from uh, maybe some of the teachers in the schools that are perhaps a little bit older or are not maybe accustomed to seeing it so expressed, very much, I think, like it is now. Um, or maybe perhaps at a younger age. I work, with a little bit younger group than you. And I think probably my school is smaller than your school too. Um, and I can only think of a couple of cases or a couple of students who were, uh, out about their sexuality. Um, but I'm sure in an older case, like with high schoolers, I think it's probably even more numbers or a larger proportion of the students that choose to, display or declare their sexuality. And I have to say that I'm a little bit in the dark about it because we just didn't see it a lot. And I don't know if this year, just because, not all the students were there, or because, again, it being a little bit of a younger group. So it's not something that I did. I can think of one student who is a girl, and she kind of wore her sexuality or her sexual preference on her sleeve a little, her sexual orientation on her sleeve a little bit. And I did notice that I think social interaction for her with other students was not the greatest. And I don't know a lot of about her, so I don't know if she's newer to the school or, like what her history is at the school. But I did notice that she really didn't talk to a lot of people, um, didn't really seem to hang out with people outside of school either. Um, I had her in one of my classes, and she was really sweet, very pleasant, and very mature, I think, even for her age. So she was definitely a student that I enjoyed having in my class, and I enjoyed talking with her. Um, and but I didn't get to experience having to just have a discussion about anybody's sexual preference with either a student or other staff. I don't know if you had that chance this school year.
Yeah, I actually had several students in my class that were like at the beginning they sent me an email and they were like, Miss Conde, I want you to call me he by the pronouns he or his. I don't want, because on the synergy,
Mhm.
they were like female, but they want to be called he or she. No, he or his pronouns. They're
Uh-huh.
like, I go for a male, even though in the system I'm a female. So they told me at the beginning of the year I want to call like this. And then sometimes they even change their names, or not names, I would say nicknames. They can't change their names yet. But they will say if they were like I don't know, Alexandra, they will call Alex. That's an example.
Mhm.
Um, just because it's a neutral name that they can use. But they told me at the beginning, yes, I want to be like this now. And that was good with me. But actually, one of my students, it was a she at the beginning of the year. It was, she asked me to be called his or he. And then later on, I overhear when she was talking to other students, because she was very social. Um, that one of the teachers was calling her he, which is something that she asked at the beginning of the year, but probably later on she changed her mind and went back to she. So it's kind of confusing all this, because people at this age is changing their mind, like they don't know, they're experiencing, they're going over this, and it's kind of hard, and I understand. So as a teacher, I think we have to have like a relationship to be like, okay, so now where you're at, you want to be called she or he? See, this sexual orientation is kind of hard to go over with the students, but I think it should be like teachers and staff,
Well,
even as students, they have to be trained. Go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say that um, something that I'm not as familiar with it, uh, because I think it's easy to throw it all under one umbrella, but you also have the gender conformity, like you're saying, with people wanting to be addressed by different pronouns versus the sexual orientation, right? And so it's, when you were talking about that, I wonder if your school has a policy about whether you allow your students to because like you said, in the school, in your school program, we use Power School, it,
Okay.
has the gender, and we go by that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't change that in the,
Mm-mm.
but I wonder if your school, if your administration talked about what, best practices with that, with respect to students who want to be, who identify as a different gender, if you are supposed to go with what they say, or if you're supposed to go with what parents say, because especially in my age group, my kids are a lot younger, because I have some sixth graders too. And so I don't know, because then you also have the situation sometimes where parents are not okay with them doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
so we had, I think,
Yes, I have
one
one of
case,
those.
and it wasn't, she was not my student, but the student wanted to be identified as male, but the parents were not okay with that, and um, they did not want that happening at the school. And so it was, I think it's new for everybody, and so I don't think there was a clear direction from administration, like, okay, it has to be, do like this or that. So it's very grayish, and it's, I don't know, I think you touched on the fact that you have to have a relationship with the student so that they trust you, but and they can feel comfortable sharing that with you, but at the same time, it's hard to balance, the what the school rules are, and then what the families want. So I don't know if you ran into having to put it all on the balance with your students.
Well, now that you mentioned, like I said, I have one student like that. Like parents didn't want that girl to be go as a male, even though the student asked to be called pronoun he, and the school, like in the system, is like female. Parent wants female, and then probably one because they told us like at the beginning of the year, I want to be called this, and usually it's a name that it's the opposite of their gender. So one of the teachers, I guess for conferences, they call home and they were like, they use a nickname that they use at school, and they were like, "What is that? Who is that?"
Oh,
Parents were really mad about it,
oh, okay.
and then the same teacher emailed all of the like the whole school, like, if you have this student, use their name when calling home because they're not okay with using the nickname.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the same time, it's kind of sad to have parents that don't um, help their kids, like they don't understand them.
Mhm.
Because I understand this is a period of learning, like what you are, who you are.
Mhm.
And it's sad that if they want to go, maybe they will be a male today and then decide to be go back to female tomorrow, or vice versa.
Mhm.
And parents are not helping. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard as a teacher. It's kind of hard as a counselor or administration. It is very hard to like balance all of those parents, students, and then other staff members.
Definitely, yeah. I agree with that 100%. I don't know if you're in your experience, you had any issues with bullying related to sexual orientation or gender identity. Um, I did not have any experience with that. I just did have one student who, um, it was funny because she was very expressive about the um, gender identity, but only when we were in virtual, when we were all on WebEx. But then
Mhm.
when she was in the classroom, it was a whole other story. It was, business as usual. There was no mention of it. But when we were on camera, she was, always had a flag in the back and always made comments on the chat about gender dysphoria. Um, and so I found that a little bit difficult to navigate. I didn't know whether she was asking for somebody to have a conversation with her about it. And, I didn't feel like I don't feel like I handled it well because it was awkward. It was online, and she never directly said anything to me, but just the general messages that came out. Um, and then, like I said, when she was actually in person in the classroom, it she said nothing about it at all. So I don't know if you had any students that maybe
Did you have
approached you
any
about it.
did you had any participation like in the classroom, or she was like totally quiet?
Um, she was she was not 100% quiet. She was not the most participant. She was kind of in the middle, just your
Mhm.
average eighth grader. uh, Very nice kid, very well. But yeah, it was just. I think it just kind of talks about what you're saying. How kids do this. Um, they're trying things out, and they're kind of trying it on and seeing how it feels, and then one day they may change their mind. And so I feel like that begs the question for us as adults or teachers, what is our role in that process? Because you want to support the students and help them be emotionally and socially healthy, but I, for one, feel like I don't know if I know everything that I'm supposed to, say, or I mean, I hope that being a good listener would be, helpful, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think creating relationship with the students will be very beneficial for both students and teachers. For one, sometimes, especially in high school, and probably eighth graders, sometimes they go home and they don't have a parent at home that actually listen to them. So sometimes the only people that listens to them it's teachers, and then other students sometimes are very immature to listen to them. And it's when like instead of they might listen, but they go back and like talk about whatever they said. So they're not mature enough to keep that information and actually help them. I'm not saying every student is like that, but it could happen. Uh, I had several students that, yes, they were like, no bullied, not that I know of, but I know when you have a sexual orientation and then a lot of people make fun of them, even though like comments like, oh, you're gay, even though they're say it like laughing and everything, still like I think those type of comments, I make sure I address those type of comments when I was there and I listen to them. Like, no, you're not gonna talk like that in my classroom, even if it's true or if it's not true. You're not doing that. If
Yeah.
outside of the classroom, outside of school, you guys are playing like that, that's fine, but not in my classroom nor in front of me when I'm
Right.
present because that's not right.
Sorry, I'm gonna
You
pause
want to
this
say
for
something?
1 second. Sorry. Okay, well, I mean, that's great that I'm kind of jealous that you got to experience that, not because it was fun to witness that, that conversation, but it sounds like you handled it really well, and like it would have been nice to have an experience like that to learn from, because my in my experience I didn't have anything like that. I think, I'm sure that it takes place, probably, knowing that kids are not always 100% kind all of the time, but I didn't get to experience it firsthand. I didn't get to witness any of that. Um, so I'm, and it sounds like you did a really good job handling that. So good job on that.
Yeah, I mean, it works out. And sometimes if I feel like, because like I said, I have this one kid that she is always like so loud. And sometimes she comes in and it's quiet, no talking, nothing, like it's sad on the room. And I'm like, what is going on? It's so quiet. You get used to. I don't like being loud, her being loud and everything. But then I'm like, what is going on? So I'm
Yeah.
like, especially this class is like right after lunch. So I'm wondering, okay, so what if somebody says something to her and now she's not feeling good? So that's when I take out my or write an email, send
Mhm.
an email to counselors. Counselors are pretty good at my school, and
Okay.
they're like, okay, I'll be right there, or send it over. And she's like, yeah, thank you for doing that. I needed to talk to someone. I'm like, I'm here, but sometimes it's not possible because I have to teach too. Like if you want to
Yeah.
stay after school, before school, I'm here. But then if it's right at the moment, I email counselors and I'm like, I need someone to talk to her. Can you do it? They're
Mhm.
like always like making time for them to talk to them and like address it pretty well, which is
Mhm.
very helpful for a teacher.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
good that you feel that you have that support because I'm sure it's not always like that. So that's good to know that that you can count on or that you can call on them. Um and that the student is willing because sometimes, especially at that age, I think it's easy for students to just kind of want to shut in and not
Hmm.
excuse me, and not talk about their feelings, depending on kind of where they're at. So did you see any other issues with bullying at all at your school in your classes?
I mean, to other students, sometimes I mean, other than comments, I don't know. I had one case my first quarter where it was a cyberbullying, and it was during my class.
Oh,
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble already. So, because they sent me an email, they were like, Miss Conde, something is happening during your period. We're going to change this student to another class because she's experiencing cyberbullying. And I'm like, because we use Microsoft Teams. So a lot of the students, they write on the comment section, on the chat section, they don't
yeah.
talk. So they're typing over there, and I'm like, sometimes I'm talking, and then it's hard if you're typing, like a lot of them are typing. It's hard to keep track of who is doing what. So
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, cyberbullying. So they had to do something in my chat while we were in class. So I started like looking, and I'm like, I don't see anything at all.
Hmm.
And both of the students were in my class. So I went back like 3 days of looking through the chat, and then finally they sent me an email and they were like, "Oh no, it was on a Snapchat, but it was happening during your class."
Oh,
So I was
okay.
like, "No, I can keep track of that. Like, it's
No,
no way."
no.
So
I
there.
mean, like you said, it was hard enough to look at people and try to keep up with the chat. It was just too much. I was
Mhm.
lucky that I figured out early on how to disable chat between the students, but they still
Mhm.
chatted in the general chat. I mean, they didn't care. But yeah, it was I so many balls to juggle at the same time. I can't imagine that stress for you to think that you had to keep track of their comments. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, that was the only, I think, cyberbullying that I know of that happened during my class. But I was just glad that didn't happen like in my class. I mean, it was during
Community.
the time in my class, but not in my class, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Totally. Yeah, that's good. Okay, well,
Yeah, other than okay, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, the audio cut out a little bit. I didn't hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just looking at the time, and I think we're probably there as far as our time requirement. Unless you had anything else that you wanted to cover.
No, I mean that's my experience as a first year teacher. Is this your first year as well?
This is my first year. Yeah. So, yeah, it was good.
Napkins.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
All right. Well,
Oh,
I think we're good. It was nice to see you.